The year is 1850, and the world outside the small, thick-paned windows of the weaver's cottage has been swallowed by a silence so profound it feels as though time itself has slowed to a crawl. It is mid-January, a month of deep blues and slate grays, where the sun remains a pale, silver coin hidden behind a heavy curtain of snow-laden clouds. Within these stone walls, the air is still, carrying the faint, sweet scent of dried lavender and the ancient, earthy musk of seasoned oak. The light is dim, a soft, pre-dawn twilight that clings to the corners of the room, softening the edges of the heavy wooden furniture and casting long, velvet shadows across the floorboards. Outside, the snow falls with a rhythmic, hypnotic consistency. Each flake is a masterpiece of geometry, drifting down from a sky that seems to press low against the thatched roof. There is no wind today, only the steady, vertical descent of white onto white. The drifts have piled high against the door, sealing the threshold with a cold, insulating embrace. The trees in the distance, great skeletal oaks and birches, are draped in heavy mantles of frost, their branches bowing under the weight of the winter's accumulation. Every sound from the village is muffled. The distant lowing of a cow or the crunch of a rare passer-by's boot is absorbed into the vast, soft blanket of the landscape. In the center of the main room stands the loom. It is a massive structural presence, carved from dark mahogany and burnished by decades of oil and human touch. Its frame is sturdy, rooted to the floor like the trunk of an ancient tree. This morning the loom is silent, but it holds the promise of the day's labor. It is threaded with fine, lustrous silk, a delicate web of ivory-colored strands that catch the first, infinitesimal hint of light. These threads are so thin they are almost invisible individually, but gathered together, they form a shimmering river of potential, stretched taut and ready for the weaver's hand. Beneath the heavy wool blankets of the bed in the corner, there is a profound sense of warmth and safety. The blankets are thick, woven from the wool of local sheep, dyed a deep, comforting indigo. They possess a pleasant weight, a grounding pressure that keeps the cold at bay. The air above the blankets is crisp and sharp, smelling of the frost that has formed intricate, fern-like patterns across the window glass. These frost patterns are a landscape of their own, tiny, crystalline forests and frozen rivers that have grown overnight, inching their way inward from the corners of the panes. To watch them is to witness the slow, deliberate artistry of the cold. The weaver remains still for a long moment, listening to the silence. It is a thick silence, textured by the distant, rhythmic ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The sound is steady, a heartbeat for the house, marking the passage of seconds that feel as long and unhurried as the winter itself. There is no rush. In the winter of 1850, the days are governed by the light and the hearth, not by the frantic pace of the industrial world far beyond these hills. Everything happens in its own time, with a slow, deliberate grace. Slowly, a hand reaches out from beneath the indigo wool. The skin feels the immediate bite of the room's chill, a bracing contrast to the cocoon of warmth beneath the covers. The hand moves toward the small bedside table, where a tinderbox and a tallow candle wait. The movements are practiced and slow. There is a soft, metallic scrape as the flint is struck against the steel. A spark jumps, a tiny, bright star in the gloom, landing on the charred linen of the tinder. A faint, glowing orange point appears, and with a gentle, focused breath, it is coaxed into a small flame. The smell of wood smoke and sulfur rises, a sharp, nostalgic scent that signals the beginning of the day. The candle is lit, its flame a small, flickering teardrop of amber light. It casts a warm, golden glow across the room, making the frost on the windows sparkle like 1,000 tiny diamonds. The weaver watches the flame for a minute, mesmerized by its steady pulse. The light reveals the textures of the room, the rough-hewn stone of the fireplace, the smooth, worn handle of a ceramic mug, the intricate grain of the wooden ceiling beams. Everything is solid, reliable, and quiet. Rising from the bed is a slow process of transitioning from one state of comfort to another. Feet find the cold floorboards, but they are quickly tucked into thick, fleece-lined slippers. The wood of the floor is old, its surface smoothed by generations of footsteps, and it gives a faint, comforting creak under the weight. This creak is a familiar voice, a sign that the house is waking up alongside its inhabitant. The first task of the morning is the hearth. The ashes from the previous night are still warm, glowing with a dull, subterranean red beneath the gray powder. With a small iron shovel, the weaver carefully clears a space for new kindling. The sound of the metal scraping against the stone is a low, grounding rasp. Tiny puffs of gray ash rise into the air, dancing in the candlelight before settling back down. Then come the wood shavings, thin, curled ribbons of pine that smell of resin and forest floors. They are piled gently onto the embers, followed by small twigs of birch. A match is applied, and the flames begin to lick at the dry wood. It starts as a soft crackle, like the sound of dry leaves being crushed underfoot. The fire catches, turning from a flicker to a steady, humming warmth. The smell of pine smoke fills the room, a rich, resinous aroma that promises comfort and safety. As the larger logs are added, thick rounds of oak that will burn slowly and steadily for hours. The light in the room shifts from the pale amber of the candle to the deep, dancing orange of the fire. The shadows on the walls begin to move, swaying in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The weaver stands by the fire for a time, warming their hands. The heat is a physical presence, radiating outward and slowly pushing back the chill of the morning. It is a slow, creeping warmth that seeps into the bones, loosening the stiffness of sleep. The kettle is filled with water from a heavy stoneware pitcher, the sound of the liquid pouring a cool, splashing melody. The kettle is placed on the iron hook over the fire, and soon a soft, rhythmic humming begins as the water approaches a boil. In the corner, the loom waits, its silk threads shimmering in the new firelight. The silk is the heart of the home, a delicate, expensive cargo that requires constant care. Before the weaving can begin, the weaver must inspect the warp, the vertical threads that run the length of the loom. This is a task of extreme patience and minute detail. Each thread must be checked for tension, for any tiny knot or fray that might mar the perfection of the fabric. The weaver moves to the loom, their movements fluid and unhurried. The silk feels cool and slick against the fingertips, like running water that has been turned into solid form. To the touch, it is incredibly smooth, yet it possesses a surprising strength. The ivory threads are dyed with natural pigments, giving them a subtle, iridescent quality that changes as the light from the fireplace shifts. Up close, one can see the infinitesimal fibers that make up a single strand, the work of thousands of silkworms, meticulously harvested and spun. The inspection begins at the far left of the loom. The weaver's fingers move slowly across the threads, plucking them gently to hear their note. A well-tensioned thread produces a faint, high-pitched ping, a tiny sound that vibrates in the quiet room. It is a rhythmic process. Touch, pluck, listen. Touch, pluck, listen. The monotony is intentional, a form of meditation that focuses the mind on the immediate, the tactile, and the small. The weaver's eyes follow the path of the silk through the heddles, the small wire loops that will lift and lower the threads to create the shed for the shuttle. Each heddle is a tiny silver eye, and the silk passes through it with a microscopic precision. There are hundreds of these eyes, and the weaver checks them one by one, ensuring that no thread has slipped or crossed another. It is a task that takes a long time, and the weaver relishes the slowness of it. There is no need for speed. The silk will be finished when it is finished, and every moment spent in preparation ensures the quality of the final cloth. The sound of the kettle beginning to whistle breaks the silence, but it is a soft, melodic whistle, not a shrill one. The weaver returns to the hearth to prepare a simple breakfast. A thick slice of bread is toasted over the embers until it is a deep, golden brown smelling of yeast and warmth. A small crock of butter, kept cool in the pantry, is spread over the bread, melting instantly into the porous surface. The tea is brewed in a heavy porcelain pot, the dark leaves unfurling in the hot water and releasing an earthy, comforting fragrance. Sitting in a high-backed wooden chair by the fire, the weaver eats slowly, watching the snow continue its steady descent outside. The world is a study in monochrome, the white of the snow, the black of the trees, the gray of the sky. Inside, however, the world is full of color, the orange of the fire, the ivory of the silk, the blue of the blankets, the amber of the tea. It is a small, self-contained universe, perfectly balanced and entirely peaceful. The rhythm of the day has been established. It is a rhythm of heat and cold, of light and shadow, of silk and stone. There are no demands from the outside world, no news to unsettle the mind, no conflicts to resolve. There is only the texture of the thread, the warmth of the fire, and the slow, inevitable passage of a winter's morning in 1850. The weaver finishes the tea, feeling the warmth of the liquid spread through their chest, and prepares to return to the loom. The real work is about to begin, a repetitive, hypnotic dance of hands and feet that will continue for hours, as the silk cloth grows inch by inch in the golden light of the cottage. The weaver stands and smooths their wool apron, the fabric thick and protective. They walk back to the loom, the floorboards creaking a gentle greeting. The shuttle, a smooth, torpedo-shaped piece of polished boxwood, sits on the side of the loom. It is heavy and cool, its surface worn to a glass-like finish by years of sliding back and forth through the silk. Inside the shuttle is a bobbin wound with the same ivory silk as the warp. This is the weft, the horizontal thread that will bind the warp together. The weaver takes their seat on the wooden bench, which is softened by a flat woven cushion. They place their feet on the treadles, the wooden pedals at the base of the loom. The wood of the treadles is dark and smooth, shaped by the pressure of feet over decades. With a slow, deliberate motion, the weaver presses down on the left treadle. There is a soft, mechanical clack as the harness rises, lifting half of the silk threads and creating a triangular tunnel, the shed. The weaver takes the shuttle in their right hand. It feels solid and balanced. With a flick of the wrist, they send the shuttle sliding through the shed. It moves with a whispery, sliding sound, shhhht, across the wooden race board. The shuttle emerges on the other side and the weaver catches it with the left hand. Then they grab the beater, the heavy wooden frame that holds the reed, and pull it forward with a firm, steady motion. Thump. The beater pushes the new weft thread tightly against the ones that came before it. Clack, shhhht, thump. The rhythm begins. Clack, the treadle changes, the threads shift. Shhhht, the shuttle glides through the silk. Thump, the reed packs the thread into place. It is a hypnotic sequence of sounds. The clack is crisp and wooden. The shhhht is soft and silken. The thump is deep and resonant. Over and over, the cycle repeats. The weaver's body moves in harmony with the machine. The arms reach, the wrists flick, the feet press, the shoulders lean. It is a dance of incredible precision and total monotony. There is no variation, no sudden changes, only the steady accumulation of silk. As the weaver works, the fabric begins to grow. It is a fine, dense silk with a subtle luster that seems to glow from within. Each row of thread is a tiny fraction of an inch, a minute addition to the whole. To look at the fabric is to see the physical manifestation of time and patience. It is a slow, beautiful process, and as the weaver watches the shuttle fly back and forth, the rest of the world fades away. There is only the silk, the sound, and the snow falling silently outside the window. As the morning progresses, the grandfather clock in the hallway strikes 10 times. The sound is a series of deep bronze notes that travel slowly through the air, vibrating through the floorboards and the heavy stone walls. Each chime is followed by a long, resonant decay, a humming silence that seems to settle back into the room like a fine layer of dust. The light has shifted almost imperceptibly. It is no longer the gray-blue of dawn, but a soft, pearlescent white that fills the space with an even, shadowless clarity. Outside, the snowfall has thickened. The individual flakes are larger now, heavy and wet, drifting down with a weight that suggests they will continue for many hours. The world beyond the glass is a white-on-white tapestry, where the horizon has vanished, and the garden gate is now merely a soft, rounded mound in the landscape. Inside the cottage, the weaver pauses. The last of the ivory silk has run off the bobbin inside the shuttle. The shuttle now feels light, an empty vessel of polished wood resting in the palm of the hand. It is time for a transition, a shift in the rhythm of the day that requires a different kind of focus. The weaver stands, and the movement causes the heavy wool of their trousers to rub together with a soft, fibrous sound. The air in the room has warmed significantly, the oak log in the hearth having settled into a deep, glowing bed of coals that radiates a steady, dry heat. The weaver moves to the corner of the room where the winding equipment is kept. Here stands the swift, a skeletal, rotating frame made of light birch wood, used to hold the skeins of silk. Beside it is the bobbin winder, a beautiful piece of simple engineering featuring a large, hand-cranked wheel connected by a leather cord to a small metal spindle. The leather cord is dark and supple, having been treated with oil to ensure it grips the wooden pulleys without slipping. The weaver takes a fresh skein of silk from a wooden chest. The silk is a pale, shimmering cream color, wound into a long, looped hank. To the touch, the skein is cool and incredibly soft, possessing a weight that belies its delicate appearance. It feels like a bundle of frozen light. The weaver carefully drapes the skein over the arms of the swift. This is a delicate operation. The silk is so fine that the slightest snag could cause a tangle. Each loop of the thread must be aligned perfectly. The weaver's fingers move with a slow, practiced grace, smoothing the strands, ensuring they lie parallel to one another. There is a quiet, rustling sound as the silk moves against the wood, a sound like the turning of a page in a very old book. Once the skein is secure, the weaver finds the beginning of the thread. It is nearly invisible, a gossamer line that catches the light and turns into a silver needle of reflection. This end is threaded through a small ceramic eyelet on the winder, and then wrapped several times around an empty wooden bobbin. The bobbin is a small cylinder of maple, turned on a lathe until its surface is as smooth as bone. The weaver takes the handle of the large wheel. It is a wooden knob, worn into an ergonomic hollow by decades of use. As the weaver begins to turn the crank, the mechanics of the winder come to life. Whir, click, whir, click. The large wheel turns slowly, the leather belt traveling over the pulleys with a rhythmic, pulsing sound. The swift begins to rotate in response, its wooden arms spinning in a slow, hypnotic circle as it gives up the silk thread. The sound of the bobbin winder is a mechanical lullaby. It is a low-frequency hum, punctuated by the soft, oily click of the gears and the occasional squeak of the rotating wood. The weaver watches the bobbin as it fills. The silk thread travels back and forth across the length of the cylinder, guided by the weaver's left thumb and forefinger. This manual guidance is essential to ensure the silk is wound with even tension. If the silk is too loose, it will tangle in the shuttle. If it is too tight, it might snap under the pressure of the loom. The weaver's fingers feel the vibration of the thread as it passes. It is a high-speed tremor, a tiny, electric pulse that travels from the spinning bobbin through the silk and into the skin. The thread is a continuous line of perfection, an unbroken filament of protein created by the silkworm, and now being repurposed by human ingenuity. As the layers of silk build up on the bobbin, the color deepens. What was a translucent shimmer on the swift becomes a solid, lustrous ivory on the bobbin. The silk begins to glow with a deep, internal light, reflecting the orange glow of the fire and the white light of the snow outside. The process of winding a single bobbin takes nearly 20 minutes. It is 20 minutes of repetitive, circular motion. The weaver's shoulder moves in a steady arc. The wrist remains supple. The eyes stay fixed on the point where the thread meets the wood. The monotony is profound, yet it is a productive monotony. There is a deep satisfaction in seeing the empty bobbin transform into a full, heavy weight of potential. The mind wanders during this task, drifting through memories of past winters, of the smell of the first frost, or the sound of the rain on the thatch. But always the attention returns to the thread, the thin, silver line that connects the past to the present. Once the bobbin is full, the weaver stops the wheel. The sudden silence is heavy, filled only by the crackle of the fire and the distant, muffled ticking of the clock. The weaver snips the thread with a pair of small, sharp iron shears. The snip is a clean, metallic sound that cuts through the quiet. The full bobbin is removed from the spindle and weighed in the hand. It is surprisingly heavy for its size, a dense core of luxury. Before returning to the loom, the weaver tends to the hearth once more. The oak log has broken apart into several smaller chunks of glowing carbon. Using the iron tongs, the weaver rearranges the pieces, stacking them so that air can flow between them. A few small pieces of dried apple wood are added to the pile. As the apple wood catches fire, it releases a sweet, fruity aroma that mingles with the resinous scent of the pine and the musk of the oak. It is a complex, comforting perfume that speaks of orchards and summer harvests, a sharp contrast to the frozen world outside. The weaver takes a moment to stand by the window. The frost on the panes has grown thicker, the crystalline structures branching out like the veins of a leaf. The weaver breathes on a small patch of the glass, the warmth of the breath creating a circular clearing in the frost. Through this tiny portal, the world is visible in all its winter glory. The snow is now so deep that the base of the stone wall surrounding the cottage has disappeared. A single robin lands on the windowsill, its red breast a shocking, vibrant dot of color against the white. The bird remains for a moment, its head tilting as it looks at the frost, before it fluffs its feathers and flies off into the gray sky. The movement is silent, a ghostly departure that leaves the landscape even stiller than before. The weaver returns to the teapot. The tea has grown dark and strong, a potent infusion of earth and warmth. A small splash of milk is added, turning the dark liquid into a creamy tan color. The weaver sips the tea slowly. It is still hot, the steam rising in a thin, swirling column that catches the light. To watch the steam is to see the physics of the room in action, the way the hot air rises and twists, influenced by the subtle drafts that move through the cottage. Each swirl is unique, a fleeting sculpture of water vapor that vanishes into the air. The weaver's hands are warm now, the skin supple and ready for the fine work of the loom. They return to the wooden bench, the seat still holding the warmth of their previous session. The new bobbin is placed into the cavity of the shuttle. The weaver threads the end of the silk through the small hole in the side of the shuttle, the eye. The silk slides through the polished wood with no resistance. The weaver prepares to restart the rhythm, but first they take a moment to look at the fabric already woven. It is a length of perhaps 6 inches, a dense, shimmering plain weave. The weaver runs a hand over the surface. It is incredibly smooth, yet the individual intersections of the warp and weft create a microscopic texture that is detectable to the touch. It feels like a solid sheet of water that has been miraculously stabilized. There are no flaws. Each pick of the weft is perfectly parallel to the one before it. The edges, the selvages, are straight and clean, a testament to the weaver's consistent tension. The weaver places their feet back on the treadles. The weight of the feet on the wood is a grounding sensation. The left treadle is depressed. Clack. The harness rises. The shed opens, revealing the intricate web of ivory threads. The weaver takes the shuttle in the right hand. The weight is perfect, balanced, and solid. With a flick of the wrist, the shuttle is sent flying. Shhhht. It travels across the raceboard, a blur of polished wood and silver silk. It is caught by the left hand with a soft, padded sound. The weaver pulls the beater. Thump. The new thread is seated. Clack shhhd, thump. The cycle has resumed. The weaver falls back into the trance of the work. The eyes follow the shuttle, but the body knows what to do without conscious thought. Each movement is an economy of motion, refined over thousands of hours. The shoulders do not tense. The neck remains relaxed. The breathing of the weaver synchronizes with the rhythm of the loom. Inhale as the shuttle flies. Exhale as the beater hits. The room is a sanctuary of industry and peace. The only sounds are the mechanical heartbeat of the loom and the soft sighing of the fire. The snow continues to fall, insulating the cottage from the rest of the world. In 1850, the production of silk is a slow, meditative process, a marriage of human skill and natural fiber. There is no hurry. The afternoon stretches out ahead, a long, unbroken expanse of time that will be filled, row by row, with the creation of beauty. The weaver observes the way the light reflects off the silk on the loom. Depending on the angle, the ivory fabric looks silver, or cream, or a pale, glowing gold. The texture of the silk fibers, the way they are twisted together, creates a surface that plays with the light. It is a living thing, this fabric. It has a soul, born from the thousands of silkworms that spun the original filaments and the hours of labor being poured into it now. The weaver continues. Clack shhhd, thump. The shuttle moves, the fabric grows, the snow falls, the fire burns. The world is small, warm, and perfectly in balance. Every few minutes, the weaver reaches up to adjust the temples, the wooden rods that keep the fabric at a constant width. The adjustment is a small, clicking sound, another note in the symphony of the room. The weaver's world has shrunk to the width of the loom and the length of the thread. It is a world of extreme detail, where the difference of a single millimeter in the tension of the silk is the most important thing in the universe. And in this focus, there is a profound, hypnotic peace. The weaver's mind is quiet, as clear and still as the frozen pond at the edge of the woods. There are no worries, no conflicts, only the rhythmic life of the silk weaver, moving slowly through the heart of the winter. The clock in the hallway strikes the hour of noon, its 12 heavy, rhythmic tollings vibrating through the wooden frame of the loom and into the weaver's very bones. The sound marks the midpoint of the day, yet in the deep of winter, the distinction between morning and afternoon is as blurred as the horizon line in the snowstorm. The light in the room has reached its maximum clarity, a flat, shadowless white that pours through the frost-trimmed windows and illuminates every microscopic detail of the cottage. Dust motes, invisible in the earlier gloom, now perform a slow, chaotic ballet in the shafts of light. They drift with an aimless, hypnotic grace, rising on the heat from the hearth and falling as they cool, tiny specks of the world's matter suspended in the stillness. The weaver decides it is time to pause. The body has a rhythm of its own, a subtle accumulation of stiffness in the shoulders and a slight dimming of the eye's focus after hours of watching the silver shuttle fly. To stop the loom is to stop a heartbeat. The weaver lets the treadles return to their neutral position. The shed closes, the silk threads of the warp coming together once more into a single, flat plane. The silence that rushes into the room is sudden and heavy, broken only by the low, guttural sigh of the fire as a log settles deeper into the white ash. Standing up from the weaving bench is a slow, deliberate movement. The weaver feels the blood returning to the legs, a warm, tingling sensation that follows the familiar paths of the veins. The floorboards beneath the flace-lined slippers feel solid and reassuring. The weaver walks toward the small kitchen area, a journey of only a few paces that feels significant in the context of the day's stillness. Every step produces a soft, rhythmic creak from the wood, a sound that is as much a part of the house as the stones in the wall. The midday meal is a study in simplicity and sensory focus. From a cool, stone-lined larder built into the north wall, the weaver retrieves a single, large potato and a small wedge of hard cheese. The potato is cool and earthy, its skin dusty with the dry soil of the cellar. The weaver takes a small, sharp knife with a handle made of smoothed deer antler. The process of peeling the potato is a quiet, repetitive task. The blade slides beneath the skin with a soft, crisp sound, scritch, scritch, revealing the pale, starchy flesh beneath. The peels fall onto a scrap of paper in a series of brown, curling ribbons, smelling faintly of the autumn garden. The weaver places the potato into a small cast-iron pot. The pot is heavy, its black surface pitted and seasoned by a century of cooking. The weaver pours water from the stoneware pitcher into the pot. The sound is a bright, splashing gurgle that echoes in the quiet room. The pot is then swung over the fire on its iron crane. The metal of the crane is soot-stained and cold to the touch, but it moves with a silent, oiled ease. As the pot hangs over the glowing embers, the weaver watches the first tiny bubbles begin to form at the bottom of the water, infinitesimal pearls of air that rise and vanish, a prelude to the steady, rhythmic boiling that will follow. While the potato cooks, the weaver turns their attention to the inventory of silk. In a large wooden chest protected from the light and the damp are the skeins of silk that have already been dyed. The weaver opens the lid, and the scent that emerges is complex and ancient. The metallic tang of iron mordants, the sweet, hay-like smell of weld, and the deep, earthy musk of indigo. This is the weaver's palette, a collection of colors that have been extracted from the earth and the forest. The weaver reaches in and pulls out a skein of madder-dyed silk. It is a deep, resonant red, the color of a sunset captured in thread. The silk is cool and fluid in the hand, sliding through the fingers like a heavy liquid. The weaver holds it up to the window light. The color is not flat. It has depth and vibration, shifting from a dark, brick red in the shadows to a bright, fiery crimson where the light hits the curves of the threads. Each fiber has taken the dye differently, creating a subtle, shimmering variation that gives the silk its life. The weaver lays the red silk on the wooden table and then retrieves a skein of indigo. This is a blue so deep it is almost black, yet when the light catches it, it reveals a hidden heart of sapphire. The indigo has a different texture. It feels slightly more crunchy than the madder, a result of the unique fermentation process used to create the dye. The weaver spends several minutes simply looking at the two colors side by side. The contrast is pleasing. The warmth of the red and the coolness of the blue, both softened by the natural origin of the pigments. There is no urgency to use them. They are merely being checked, counted, and appreciated. The sound of the potato pot begins to change. The gentle simmering has escalated into a steady, rhythmic bubbling. The steam rises in a thick white plume, carrying the clean, starchy scent of the cooking potato. The weaver returns to the hearth and uses a wooden spoon to test the potato. The spoon is worn thin at the edges, its surface smooth as glass from decades of stirring. The potato is soft, yielding easily to the touch. The weaver drains the water into a bucket, the steam rising in a sudden hot cloud that momentarily fogs the weaver's vision and warms the face. The potato is placed in a shallow ceramic bowl, its surface steaming and ivory white. A small pat of butter is added, and the weaver watches as it begins to melt, the yellow liquid pooling in the crevices of the potato and glistening in the firelight. A pinch of coarse salt is sprinkled over the top, the white crystals disappearing into the butter. The weaver sits at the small table by the window to eat. The meal is slow and silent. The texture of the potato is floury and warm, the butter rich and salty. Outside, the world remains locked in its white embrace. The snow has piled so high now that the lower panes of the window are partially obscured, creating a soft, curved drift of white that leans against the glass. The silence of the landscape is total. No birds are visible now. Even the robin has sought shelter in the deep evergreen thickets. The only movement is the occasional slump of snow sliding off a tree branch or the roof. A sound so muffled it is more a vibration than a noise. After the meal, the weaver does not immediately return to the loom. Instead, there is a period of maintenance, a slow, methodical cleaning of the tools. The weaver takes a soft piece of chamois leather and begins to wipe down the wooden frame of the loom. The wood is mahogany, and it responds to the rubbing with a deep, dull glow. The weaver moves the cloth over the horizontal beams, the upright posts, and the heavy beater. The friction creates a faint, pleasant warmth under the leather. This act of cleaning is not just about aesthetics. It is a way of checking the integrity of the machine. The weaver feels for any hairline cracks in the wood, any looseness in the joinery, any sign that the dry winter air is affecting the loom. The weaver then inspects the reed. The reed is a long, comb-like tool made of hundreds of thin, polished strips of steel set into a wooden frame. Each silk thread passes through a dent, or a gap in the reed. The reed must be perfectly smooth. The slightest speck of rust or a tiny burr on the metal could shred the delicate silk. The weaver uses a small, stiff-bristled brush to clean between the dents. The sound is a rhythmic scritch, 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 a tiny mechanical scratching that fills the quiet room. The weaver's eyes are inches from the metal, moving slowly from one end of the reed to the other. It is a task of extreme focus, a meditation on the perfection of the tool. Next, the weaver checks the heels, the twine loops that hold the silver eyes through which the silk is threaded. The heels are made of varnished linen thread, and they must be flexible yet strong. The weaver runs a finger down the rows of heels, feeling their tension. They make a soft, fluttering sound like the wings of a moth as the finger passes over them. Everything is in order. The loom is a masterpiece of Victorian engineering, a silent partner in the weaver's life, and it is treated with the reverence it deserves. The weaver looks at the clock. It is nearly 2 in the afternoon. The light is beginning its slow, inevitable decline toward evening. In the winter, the golden hour is short and pale, a brief moment where the white light turns to a soft, brushed silver before fading into the blue of twilight. The weaver knows that the most productive hours of the day are nearing their end, yet there is no sense of pressure. The rhythm of the work is what matters, not the volume of the output. The weaver returns to the hearth to add another log. This one is a thick piece of seasoned ash. It is heavy and cold, the bark rough and gray. As it is placed onto the coals, it doesn't catch fire immediately. Instead, it sits there, hissing softly as the residual moisture in the wood is driven out by the heat. A thin line of white smoke curls up from the end of the log, dancing in the draft before the wood finally bursts into a steady, blue-edged flame. The warmth in the room is now deep and pervasive, a solid wall of heat that protects the weaver from the sub-zero temperatures, just inches away on the other side of the stone walls. The weaver returns to the weaving bench. The silk warp is waiting, a shimmering path of ivory leading into the heart of the loom. The weaver takes the shuttle, which has been resting on the side table. The wood of the shuttle is warm now, having sat near the fire. The weaver checks the tension of the silk on the bobbin once more, pulling a few inches of thread through the eye. It moves with a smooth, consistent resistance. The weaver's feet find the treadles. The weight of the body shifts, the bench creaking a familiar greeting. The left treadle is depressed. Clack. The shed opens. The light from the window catches the interior of the shed, making the threads look like a series of silver harp strings. The shuttle is sent through. Shhhht. The beater is pulled. Thump. Clack. Shhhht. Thump. The afternoon rhythm begins to establish itself. It is slower than the morning rhythm, more contemplative. The weaver is no longer waking up. The weaver is now deep within the work. The movements are so fluid they seem automatic, the result of a lifetime of muscle memory. The weaver's mind enters a state of flow, where the boundaries between the self, the loom, and the silk begin to dissolve. There is only the sequence of sounds and the growing length of the fabric. As the weaver works, the silk begins to take on a new character. In the fading light, the ivory cloth looks denser, its luster becoming more subtle and sophisticated. The weaver notices a tiny, almost invisible speck of dust on the surface of the woven fabric. They stop the loom, reach out with a pair of fine tweezers, and gently lift the speck away. The interruption is brief, a moment of absolute precision in the midst of the rhythmic labor. The weaver watches the way the temples, the wooden stretchers that hold the fabric taut, move forward as the cloth is advanced. Every few inches, the weaver must release the tension on the warp, wind the finished cloth onto the cloth beam at the front of the loom, and then reset the temples. This is a slow, mechanical process. The ratchets on the beams make a series of sharp, metallic clicks, click, 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 as the tension is adjusted. The sound is satisfying, a literal measurement of progress. The weaver runs a hand over the newly wound cloth on the beam. It is cool and smooth, a solid cylinder of silk. This is the fruit of the day's labor, a physical record of thousands of shuttle throws and treadle presses. It represents hours of quiet, focused existence in the heart of a winter's day. The weaver feels a sense of profound peace. In the world of 1850, there are many changes happening. Great factories are being built. Steam engines are crisscrossing the land. But here, in this cottage, the ancient rhythm of the weaver remains unchanged. It is a life of silence, of texture, and of the slow, beautiful creation of something lasting. The snow continues to fall, a silent, vertical curtains of white. The room grows slightly darker, the corners beginning to fill with the first soft shadows of the coming evening. But the weaver continues, the shuttle moving back and forth, a silver bird in the twilight. Clack shhhd, thump. The rhythm continues, hypnotic and eternal. Clack shhhd, thump. The silk grows, the fire burns, the world sleeps. Clack shhhd, thump. The weaver is at peace. As the clock in the hallway measures out the first few minutes of 3 in the afternoon, the light within the weaver's cottage undergoes a subtle but profound transformation. In the winter of 1850, the day does not simply end. It dissolves. The sharp, white clarity of the midday sun, even filtered as it was through the heavy clouds, begins to soften into a bruised, atmospheric purple. This is the blue hour, a time when the snow outside loses its blinding brilliance and takes on the hue of twilight, a deep, ethereal indigo that seems to radiate from the ground itself. The shadows in the corners of the room, which had been faint and translucent, now thicken and grow heavy, like pools of dark velvet spreading across the stone floor. The weaver recognizes the change not by looking at the window, but by the way the silk on the loom behaves. The ivory threads, which had been shimmering with a bright silver luster, now appear matte and ghostly. The fine details of the warp become harder to distinguish, the individual strands merging into a single, pale plane. It is a signal, as reliable as any clock, that the era of natural light is drawing to a close. To continue the work with the precision required for high-grade silk, the weaver must now transition to the artificial glow of the lamp. The weaver stands from the bench, the movement slow and rhythmic. There is a specific sequence to this part of the day, a ritual that has been repeated every winter afternoon for as long as the weaver can remember. They walk toward the mantel above the fireplace, where the oil lamp sits. It is a substantial object, a moderator lamp made of polished brass and heavy glass, a piece of modern technology for 1850 that provides a steady, flicker-free light. The brass is cool to the touch, its surface reflecting the orange embers of the fire in a distorted, flickering dance. The first step in the ritual is the preparation of the lamp. The weaver unscrews the brass collar that holds the glass chimney in place. The glass is incredibly thin and clear, but it has developed a faint gray veil of soot from the previous evening's use. The weaver takes a soft, dry cloth made of old linen and begins to clean the chimney. This is a task that cannot be rushed. The cloth moves in a circular motion, swish, 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 inside the glass cylinder. The sound is a high-pitched, rhythmic squeak that echoes in the quiet room. The weaver watches as the soot is lifted away, revealing the pristine transparency of the glass once more. It is a satisfying process, a minor restoration of clarity in a world that is slowly turning to shadow. Next comes the wick. The weaver uses a pair of small, silver-plated trimmers to snip away the charred tip of the cotton wick. The click of the trimmers is sharp and final. A perfectly trimmed wick is essential. If it is uneven, the flame will smoke and flicker, casting erratic shadows that would make the weaving impossible. The weaver adjusts the wick height using a small, knurled brass knob, feeling the mechanical resistance of the internal gears. It is a smooth, oily sensation, the sign of a well-maintained tool. The lamp is fueled with rapeseed oil, kept in a ceramic jug near the hearth to ensure it remains liquid in the cold. The weaver pours the oil into the lamp's reservoir. The sound is a low, heavy glug, bloop, 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 as the golden liquid fills the brass chamber. The smell of the oil is faint and nutty, a clean, vegetable scent that is far more pleasant than the acrid tallow used in the cheaper candles. The weaver allows the oil a few minutes to soak into the fresh wick, a period of waiting that encourages a moment of stillness. The lighting of the lamp is the centerpiece of the afternoon. The weaver takes a long, thin wooden splinter from a box by the fire and touches it to a glowing ember. The wood catches instantly, a tiny, bright spear of flame. This is carried to the lamp. As the flame touches the oil-soaked wick, a soft, blue light appears at the base, quickly blossoming into a steady, teardrop-shaped orb of warm, golden yellow. The weaver carefully replaces the glass chimney. The flame settles, shielded from the drafts, and begins to radiate a brilliant, focused light that pushes the shadows back into the far corners of the cottage. The weaver carries the lamp back to the loom. There is a dedicated wooden bracket attached to the frame, designed to hold the lamp at the perfect height to illuminate the working face of the fabric. As the lamp is set into place, the silk undergoes its second transformation of the hour. Under the concentrated light of the lamp, the ivory threads don't just shimmer, they glow. The light penetrates the layers of silk, creating a depth of luster that was not visible in the flat light of the overcast day. The weave looks richer, the texture more pronounced. Every tiny intersection of thread is highlighted, casting a microscopic shadow that gives the fabric a three-dimensional quality. Before sitting back down, the weaver takes a small tin of purified beeswax from their pocket. The skin of the weaver's hands has become slightly dry from the heat of the fire and the constant friction of the silk. To a weaver, the hands are as important as the loom. Any roughness or a single hangnail could snag the delicate fibers. The weaver rubs a small amount of the wax into their palms. The wax is hard at first, but it quickly softens from the heat of the skin, turning into a smooth, protective film. It smells of honey and the summer meadows, a brief, olfactory reminder of a different season. The weaver rubs their fingers together, ensuring they are perfectly smooth, before touching the silk once more. The weaver returns to the bench. The wood is still warm from their earlier presence. The rhythm of the loom resumes, but it is different now, confined to the golden circle of light provided by the lamp. Clack shhhd, thump. The sound of the shuttle is louder now that the world outside has fallen into the absolute silence of the winter evening. The shhhht of the silk sliding through the shed is a whispery, liquid sound, like the movement of a long gown across a ballroom floor. The thump of the beater is solid and grounding, a percussive beat that marks the slow growth of the cloth. Clack shhhd, thump. The weaver focuses on the picks per inch. In the high-quality silk being woven today, there must be exactly 120 picks of the weft for every inch of fabric. This requires a level of consistency that borders on the superhuman. The weaver's left hand, which operates the beater, must apply the exact same amount of pressure every single time. To ensure this, the weaver counts, not out loud, but in a silent, internal pulse. 1, 2, 3, 4. The counting is a hypnotic layer on top of the physical rhythm. It occupies the surface of the mind, preventing it from wandering too far, while the deeper parts of the brain manage the complex coordination of hands and feet. The weaver watches the fell of the cloth, the line where the new thread meets the finished fabric. It is a straight, unwavering line of ivory, moving slowly, almost imperceptibly, toward the weaver. Outside, the blue hour has faded into a deep obsidian night. The windows are now black mirrors, reflecting the interior of the cottage back at the weaver. The frost on the glass has grown into thick, opaque forests of ice, catching the golden lamplight and sparkling with an inner fire. The world outside the stone walls has ceased to exist. There is only this room, this loom, and this pool of light. The temperature outside is dropping rapidly, the cold pressing against the cottage like a physical weight. But inside, the fire and the lamp create a sanctuary of warmth and productivity. The weaver notices a small change in the sound of the fire. The ash log has burned down into a heap of glowing coals, and the hissing of the moisture has stopped. The heat is now steady and silent. The weaver decides to let the fire rest for a while, the bed of coals providing more than enough warmth for the immediate area. The silence of the room deepens, the only sounds being the heartbeat of the loom and the rhythmic, heavy breathing of the weaver. The work continues for another hour. The weaver has added another 3 inches of silk to the roll. This represents nearly 400 throws of the shuttle, 400 depressions of the treadles, and 400 strikes of the beater. To an outsider, it might seem like a tedious, grueling task, but to the weaver, it is a state of grace. There is a profound sense of security in the repetition. In a world that can be unpredictable and harsh, the loom is a machine of logic and order. If you provide the silk and the movement, it will provide the beauty. It is a fair and honest exchange. The weaver pauses to adjust the temples again. The wooden bars are moved forward, their small metal teeth gripping the edges of the silk to keep it taut. The click-click of the adjustment is a sharp, mechanical punctuation in the flow of the work. The weaver runs a finger along the selvage, the edge of the fabric. It is as straight as a ruled line, the tension perfect. This silk will eventually become a waistcoat for a gentleman in London, or perhaps a lining for a lady's cloak. It will travel far from this quiet cottage, carrying with it the hours of silence and the rhythm of the winter evening. The weaver looks at the lamp. The oil level has dropped slightly, but it will last for several more hours. The flame is steady, a golden sentinel in the darkness. The weaver feels a wave of heavy, comfortable tiredness beginning to settle over their shoulders. It is not the exhaustion of stress, but the honest fatigue of a day well spent in labor. The eyes are a little heavy, the rhythm of the loom acting as a lullaby. Clack shhhd, thump. The shuttle flies. The silk grows. The shadows dance on the stone walls, mimicking the movements of the weaver. The grandfather clock in the hall, sensing the approach of 4 o'clock, begins its internal whirring, preparing to announce the hour. The sound is a low, mechanical growl that precedes the strike. The weaver decides to weave just a few more rows. The goal for the day is almost met. In the winter of 1850, there is no need to work deep into the night. The light of the lamp is a precious resource, and the body needs its rest to maintain the precision required for the silk. The weaver's movements slow down even further, becoming even more deliberate. Every throw of the shuttle is savored, every strike of the beater felt in the palms. Clack shhhd, thump. The sound of the world is just this: the silk, the wood, the oil, and the cold. It is a small, perfect life, measured out in threads of ivory and moments of golden light. The weaver is a part of the machine, and the machine is a part of the weaver, both moving in a slow, hypnotic dance through the heart of the winter night. The clock begins to strike. 1, 2, 3, 4. The bronze notes are heavy and slow, hanging in the air like the scent of the wood smoke. The weaver finishes the row, catches the shuttle one last time, and lets the beater rest against the fell of the cloth. The day's weaving is done. The weaver stays on the bench for a moment, letting the silence settle. The room feels larger now that the loom has stopped. The shadows seem to lean in closer to the circle of lamplight. The weaver reaches out and touches the silk one last time. It is cool, smooth, and perfect. It is a physical manifestation of the afternoon, a piece of time turned into fabric. Slowly the weaver stands, the floorboards creaking a soft acknowledgement of the shift. The lamp is picked up, its light swaying and casting long, sweeping shadows across the ceiling. The weaver walks toward the hearth to prepare for the transition to the evening meal and the eventual return to the warmth of the bed. But for now, the weaver simply stands in the center of the room, the golden lamp in hand, a solitary figure of peace in the deep, silent winter of 1850. The clock in the hallway has long since finished its 4 heavy strikes, and the vibration has finally dissipated from the air, leaving behind a silence that feels thicker and more structural than the silence of the morning. In the year 1850, the transition from the labor of the day to the repose of the evening is not a sharp boundary, but a slow, rhythmic fading. The weaver remains standing for a moment by the loom, the brass lamp held aloft. The light from the lamp catches the edge of the newly woven silk, creating a razor-thin line of silver light that defines the progress of the day. It is a satisfying sight, a physical measurement of time and intent turned into tangible beauty. The first task of the evening is the preservation of the work. Silk is a delicate traveler, and even within the safety of the cottage, it must be protected from the microscopic particles of soot and the drying effects of the hearth. The weaver moves to a wooden peg on the wall and retrieves a long, rectangular sheet of unbleached linen. This cloth is heavy and cool, having hung in the shadows for most of the day. As the weaver unfolds it, the sound is a soft, rhythmic flap-snap crinkle, the sound of honest, sturdy fiber. The weaver carefully drapes the linen over the loom. This is a slow and precise operation. The cloth must be laid gently so as not to disturb the tension of the warp threads or the delicate position of the shuttle. The weaver starts at the top of the frame, smoothing the linen over the breast beam and down across the fell of the cloth. The hands move with a rhythmic, downward stroking motion, ensuring there are no folds or gathers. The linen feels rough and earthy against the weaver's palms, a stark contrast to the ethereal smoothness of the silk it now protects. Underneath this protective shroud, the ivory silk is tucked away, safe from the world, resting in the dark until the sun, or the lamp, returns to call it back to life. With the loom secured, the weaver turns their attention to the evening's logistics. The temperature inside the cottage has remained steady, but the world outside is in the grip of a deepening freeze. The weaver walks to the heavy oak door. Even through the thick wood, the cold is a palpable presence, a silent force pressing against the threshold. The weaver reaches out and touches the iron bolt. It is painfully cold, a piece of the winter night brought indoors. With a slow, steady pull, the bolt slides back, shhh clink, a metallic sound that feels amplified in the quiet room. The weaver opens the door just a few inches. The resistance is immediate. A drift of snow has piled against the exterior, and the weaver must push against its soft, heavy weight. A swirl of freezing air rushes into the room, smelling of absolute purity, of ice, and of the vast, sleeping forests beyond the valley. It is a bracing, sharp sensation that clears the lungs and makes the skin tingle. The weaver reaches out into the darkness to retrieve a small bucket of coal kept in the lean-to. The movement is quick, a brief excursion into the Arctic night before pulling the door shut and sliding the bolt back into place. The warmth of the cottage rushes back to greet the weaver, a comforting embrace that feels twice as heavy after the brush with the outside air. The weaver carries the coal to the hearth. The fire has burned down to a deep, cavernous glow, the logs transformed into a landscape of shifting orange and translucent red. Using a pair of iron tongs, the weaver places 3 small lumps of coal onto the embers. There is a series of tiny, sharp pops and crackles as the coal reacts to the heat. Unlike the wood, which burns with a dancing, energetic flame, the coal will settle into a slow, rhythmic pulse of intense heat, ensuring the cottage remains warm through the long hours of the night. The weaver watches as a thin, yellow flame begins to lick at the edges of the coal, a slow-motion transformation that is mesmerizing to behold. It is time to prepare the evening meal, a ritual of nourishment that is as slow and deliberate as the weaving itself. The weaver moves to the stone-top table. Tonight, the meal will be a simple pottage of dried peas and winter leeks, which have been simmering in a heavy ceramic pot on the edge of the hearth for most of the afternoon. The weaver takes a wooden spoon and begins to stir the contents. The sound is a thick, rhythmic glup-squish-glup, a comforting, domestic melody. The scent that rises from the pot is earthy and sweet, the leeks having softened into a savory velvet, the peas having broken down into a dense, nourishing cream. The weaver retrieves a wooden bowl from the shelf. This bowl was turned from a single piece of apple wood, its grain forming a series of concentric circles that tell the story of the tree's life. The weaver ladles the pottage into the bowl, the steam rising in a thick white column that catches the light of the lamp. A thick crust of bread, saved from the morning, is placed on a small wooden board. The bread is hard and honest, smelling of toasted grain. The weaver takes a knife and cuts a single, even slice. The sound of the blade through the crust is a crisp, rhythmic crunch, a textural sound that promises a satisfying bite. The weaver sits in the large, wing-backed chair by the fire to eat. This chair is a sanctuary within a sanctuary. It is upholstered in a heavy, scratchy wool that has been softened by decades of use. As the weaver sinks into the cushions, the chair gives a long, low creak, a sound of welcome and stability. The weaver holds the warm bowl in both hands, letting the heat seep into the palms and up through the wrists. In the winter of 1850, a warm bowl is not just a container for food. It is a portable hearth, a source of life and comfort. The eating of the meal is a slow, rhythmic process. Each spoonful of the pottage is savory and hot, a slow-moving heat that spreads through the chest and belly. The weaver chews the bread thoroughly, appreciating the resistance of the crust and the softness of the interior. Outside, the wind has begun to rise, a low, mournful sighing in the thatch of the roof. It is a sound that emphasizes the safety of the interior. The wind may howl and the snow may drift, but here, within the stone walls, there is only the rhythmic ticking of the clock, the low hum of the fire, and the steady, quiet consumption of the meal. As the weaver eats, their eyes wander to the shelves that line the far wall. These shelves hold the materials of the weaver's trade, spools of linen thread, bundles of raw silk, jars of natural dyes, and a collection of wooden bobbins. In the dim light of the lamp, these objects take on a sculptural quality. The jars of indigo look like deep, black voids. The bundles of silk look like clouds of captured moonlight. The weaver knows the history of every object on those shelves, where the silk was purchased, which neighbor grew the flax for the linen, and which forest provided the wood for the bobbins. It is a world of interconnected, tangible things. The meal finished, the weaver sets the bowl aside and remains in the chair for a time, watching the fire. The coal has now caught fully, glowing with a steady, unblinking intensity. The room is at its warmest now, the heat radiating from the stone hearth and filling every corner. The weaver feels a profound sense of physical relaxation. The muscles of the shoulders, which have been held in a state of precise tension all day, finally let go. The fingers, so long occupied with the microscopic management of silk threads, now rest quietly in the lap. The weaver decides to perform one last task before the final winding down of the night. It is a task of logistics and foresight. They move to the wooden chest where the raw silk is stored and retrieve a small bundle of organzine, the high-quality silk thread used for the warp. This bundle needs to be weighed and sorted for the next project, a process that requires a different kind of focus. The weaver takes a small brass balance scale from the shelf and sets it on the table. The scale is a beautiful, delicate instrument. The weaver places a series of small lead weights in one pan, clink, 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 the sound of tiny metallic decisions. In the other pan, the silk is added. The weaver watches the needle of the scale as it moves in a slow, rhythmic arc. The silk is so light that it takes a surprising volume to move the needle. The weaver adds the thread strand by strand, a process of extreme patience. The silk slides through the fingers with a dry, rustling sound, a whisper of luxury in the quiet room. Once the weight is determined, the weaver begins to sort the strands by length and quality. This is a visual and tactile inspection. The weaver holds the silk up to the lamp, looking for any slubs or irregularities. The eyes move slowly along the length of the thread, a rhythmic scanning motion. The fingers feel for any variation in thickness. It is a monotonous, low-stakes task that perfectly bridges the gap between the activity of the day and the stillness of the night. Each perfect strand is laid in a neat, parallel line on a piece of dark velvet, creating a shimmering record of quality. As the weaver works, the clock in the hall strikes 5. The sound is softer now, Or perhaps the weaver has simply become so attuned to it that it no longer interrupts the flow of thought. The 5 notes are a reminder that the evening is progressing, that the time for rest is drawing closer. The weaver finishes the sorting, carefully wrapping the silk in a piece of blue tissue paper and returning it to the chest. The lid of the chest closes with a solid, wooden thud, a sound that signals the end of the day's professional concerns. The weaver returns to the hearth to bank the fire for the night. This is a crucial task. Using the shovel, the weaver covers the glowing coal with a layer of fine gray ash. This banking slows the combustion, ensuring that the fire will smolder quietly for hours, maintaining a base of heat that will make it easy to restart the flames in the morning. The weaver works with a slow, rhythmic motion, spreading the ash evenly. The light in the room dims as the glowing coals are hidden, the orange glow retreating into a soft, ambient warmth. The weaver takes the oil lamp and prepares to move toward the small sleeping alcove. But before they go, they stand in the center of the room one last time. The cottage feels alive in the silence. There is the scent of the leek pottage, the smell of the coal smoke, the faint aroma of the silk, and the clean, cold scent of the winter air that still lingers near the door. It is a rich, sensory tapestry, as complex and carefully woven as any fabric. The weaver looks at the loom, now a silent, linen-draped ghost in the corner. The work is there, waiting. The progress is made. The silk is safe. The weaver feels a deep, soul-level satisfaction. In 1850, in the heart of a winter storm, this is what peace looks like. A warm room, a full belly, a finished task, and the rhythmic promise of a tomorrow that will be much like today. The weaver turns the brass knob on the lamp, lowering the wick. The flame shrinks, turning from a bright yellow orb to a small blue flicker, and then, with a tiny poof, it vanishes. The room is plunged into a soft, velvety darkness, illuminated only by the faint, subterranean red of the banked embers. The weaver moves through the familiar space by touch and memory, the floorboards creaking a rhythmic good night. The heavy wool blankets of the bed are waiting, and as the weaver slides beneath them, the world of the silk weaver finally falls into a deep, rhythmic sleep. The transition from the conscious world to the realm of deep, winter slumber is a slow and magnificent descent, a gradual shedding of the day's weight that mirrors the settling of the cottage itself. As the weaver lies beneath the heavy indigo wool blankets, the world of 1850 seems to contract until it consists only of the immediate tactile sensations of the bed. The mattress, filled with clean, dried oat straw, gives a soft, rhythmic rustle with every minor adjustment of the body. It is a dry, crisp sound, a reminder of the sun-drenched fields of the previous August, now repurposed to provide a firm yet yielding foundation for rest. The straw has been packed densely, and it emits a faint, wholesome scent of the harvest, a golden, earthy aroma that provides a psychological anchor in the midst of the freezing winter night. The blankets themselves are a marvel of domestic engineering. There are 4 layers in total, each contributing a different quality of warmth and texture. The layer closest to the weaver's skin is a sheet of fine, brushed linen. It has been laundered with lavender and dried in the crisp autumn air, and it possesses a smoothness that is almost silken, yet it retains a certain substantial, fibrous integrity. Above this lies the primary indigo blanket, a heavy, double-woven textile that the weaver crafted several winters ago. The wool is thick and coarse, retaining a hint of natural lanolin that makes the fabric feel slightly oily and incredibly resilient. This weight is a profound comfort. It is a grounding force that keeps the body still, encouraging the muscles to release their long-held tension. The indigo dye, derived from the fermented leaves of the indigofera plant, has a deep, visual silence to it, a color so dark and resonant that it seems to absorb the very shadows of the room. The air in the sleeping alcove is notably cooler than the air near the hearth, creating a sharp, bracing contrast between the warmth of the bed and the atmosphere of the room. As the weaver breathes, a tiny, translucent plume of mist forms and then vanishes, a rhythmic visualization of the life force continuing in the cold. The scent of the air is complex. It carries the faint, lingering sweetness of the wood smoke from the main room, the sharp, metallic tang of the frost that is thickening on the window panes, and the clean, ozonic purity of the snow that continues to fall outside. It is a scent that speaks of absolute stillness, of a world that has been put into a state of deep, crystalline, suspended animation. Beyond the edge of the bed, the cottage is alive with the sounds of its own existence. Stone and wood, subjected to the intense cold of the night, are engaged in a slow, rhythmic dialogue of contraction. A heavy oak beam in the ceiling gives a long, low groan, a sound that is not startling, but rather a familiar sign of the house's sturdy endurance. The stone walls, 3 feet thick and built from local granite, seem to hum with a subterranean vibration as they hold the immense weight of the snow on the roof. The thatch, a dense layer of water reed and wheat straw, rustles softly as the wind brushes against it. It is a dry, whispering sound, like the movement of 1,000 tiny wings, providing an acoustic insulation that makes the interior of the cottage feel even more isolated and secure. In the hallway, the grandfather clock remains the steadfast conductor of the night's symphony. Its ticking is more than a measurement of time. It is the heartbeat of the home. The sound is divided into 2 distinct notes, the tick, a bright metallic strike of the escapement, and the tock, a deeper, more resonant thud as the energy is transferred through the wooden casing. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The rhythm is unwavering, a constant in an unpredictable world. The weaver listens to the sound, allowing their own breathing to synchronize with the movement of the pendulum. Inhale for 4 ticks, hold for 1, exhale for 4 tocks. This rhythmic breathing becomes a bridge into a state of light trance, a place where the boundary between the self and the environment begins to blur. The light in the room is now reduced to the absolute minimum. The banked fire in the main room occasionally emits a soft, amber pulse that reflects off the polished wood of the doorframe, casting a brief, ghostly glow into the sleeping alcove. But mostly, the light comes from the moon, which has managed to find a thin veil in the clouds. This moonlight is not yellow or white. It is a pale, spectral blue that filters through the frost-covered window. The frost has transformed the glass into a series of intricate silver tapestries. To the weaver's half-closed eyes, these patterns look like the silk warp on the loom, long, crystalline strands that cross and recross in a complex geometric dance. There are shapes that resemble the fronds of a fern, the delicate veins of a leaf, and the sharp mathematical precision of a snowflake. Each crystal is a frozen moment of time, a masterpiece of cold. The weaver's mind begins to drift, moving in slow, rhythmic circles around the images of the day's work. In this state of pre-sleep, the memory of the loom is vivid. The weaver can almost feel the smooth boxwood surface of the shuttle in their palm, and the rhythmic shhhht of the silk sliding through the shed echoes in the mind's ear. The silk itself, that ivory river of light, becomes a metaphor for the night. It is smooth, continuous, and strong. The weaver imagines the threads of the day being woven into the fabric of the night, a seamless transition from the labor of the hands to the labor of the soul. There is no anxiety, no concern for the tasks of tomorrow. In the winter of 1850, the future is a distant country. The only reality is the weight of the blankets and the rhythm of the clock. The physical sensation of the cold begins to creep across the floor, a slow-moving tide of dense, heavy air that settles into the low points of the room. The weaver pulls the blankets higher, tucking them around the chin. The wool is slightly scratchy, a tactile stimulus that paradoxically enhances the feeling of softness within the bed. The chin finds a warm hollow in the pillow, which is filled with the softest down of the farm's geese. The feathers provide a weightless support, a cloud-like cradle for the head. The weaver can hear the soft, rhythmic sound of their own pulse in the ear pressed against the pillow, a dull, thudding counterpoint to the ticking of the clock. Outside, the snow has reached a depth that has completely altered the acoustics of the landscape. The usual sounds of the countryside, the rustle of dry hedges, the distant sound of a stream are gone. The world is wrapped in a thick white bandage of silence. If a branch were to break under the weight of the snow in the woods a mile away, the sound would not reach the cottage. This silence is not empty. It is a dense, positive presence. It is the silence of insulation, of protection, of the earth gathering its strength for a distant spring. The weaver finds this silence to be the most hypnotic element of all. It is a vast, unwritten page, a space where the mind can finally cease its constant weaving of thoughts and simply exist. The grandfather clock prepares to strike the hour of midnight. There is a preparatory whirring of gears, a mechanical clearing of the throat that lasts for several seconds. Then the first strike occurs. Bong. The sound is deep and bronze, a low-frequency vibration that travels through the air and is felt as much as heard. It is a slow, rhythmic tolling. Bong, bong, bong. 12 times the hammer strikes the coil, and 12 times the sound fills the cottage, reverberating through the stone and the timber. After the final strike, the silence that returns is even deeper than before. A profound and velvet quiet that seems to push the weaver further down into the depths of sleep. The weaver's hands, resting beneath the covers, are warm and still. The skin is smooth from the beeswax and the day's contact with the silk. The fingers, which have performed thousands of precise movements since sunrise, are now curled in a position of total repose. The weaver feels a sense of immense gratitude for the reliability of the body and the machine. The day's labor is safely stored on the cloth beam, a physical record of patience and skill. The silk is safe under its linen shroud. The fire is safe under its blanket of ash. The weaver is safe within the heart of the winter. The rhythm of the night continues its slow, inevitable progression. The moon moves across the sky, shifting the shadows in the room with a glacial pace. The frost on the window grows by another fraction of a millimeter, its crystalline branches reaching toward the center of the pane. The coal in the hearth settles with a tiny, musical clink, a final acknowledgement of the heat it has provided. The weaver is now at the very edge of sleep, the conscious mind a flickering candle in a vast, dark hall. The images of the loom, the silk, the snow, and the fire all merge into a single, rhythmic pulse of existence. There is a final, fleeting thought of the silk, the way the ivory threads catch the light. In the mind's eye, the weaver sees a single strand of silk, glowing with a soft, internal luminescence. It stretches out into the darkness, a silver line that connects the waking world to the world of dreams. The weaver follows the thread, letting it lead them deeper into the warmth, deeper into the weight of the indigo blankets, and finally into the total, rhythmic embrace of the winter night. The clock ticks on, a steady guardian of the hours, but the weaver is no longer listening. The weaver has become part of the silence, part of the stone, and part of the slow, unfolding history of the year 1850. As the body enters the first stage of true sleep, the breathing slows even further. The chest rises and falls with a profound mechanical regularity. Each breath is a soft, rhythmic sigh, a quiet conversation with the still air of the room. The heart rate drops, the pulse becoming a slow, steady drumbeat that echoes the ticking of the clock in the distance. The world is small, the world is warm, and the world is perfectly, boringly at peace. The snow continues its vertical descent, a silent, infinite curtain falling over the cottage, sealing it away in a cocoon of white and shadow. Here, in the heart of the English countryside, in the middle of a Victorian winter, the silk weaver rests, fully surrendered to the rhythmic life of the night. The house remains a sentinel, its thick walls and heavy thatch protecting the delicate life within. The oak beams continue to groan softly, the stone continues to hum, and the grandfather clock continues its tireless vigil. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It is the only sound in the universe, a steady, rhythmic promise that the world will continue to turn, and that when the pale silver light of the winter morning finally returns, the loom and the silk will be there, waiting to resume their dance. But for now, there is only the darkness, the warmth, and the deep, hypnotic silence of the weaver's rest. The hallway clock strikes twice, the bronze notes falling into the stagnant air of the cottage like heavy stones into a deep, dark well. At 2 o'clock in the morning, in the dead of the winter of 1850, the world exists in a state of absolute crystalline suspension. The weaver, drifting in the shallow waters between deep sleep and wakefulness, becomes aware of the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. The intense, radiating heat of the evening has dissipated, replaced by a more pervasive, creeping chill that has seeped through the thick stone walls and settled near the floor. It is a slow, rhythmic cooling, a natural ebb of the thermal tide that occurs every night during the frost moon. With a slow, languid movement, the weaver shifts beneath the layers of indigo wool and linen. The movement causes the dried oat straw of the mattress to produce a series of crisp, rhythmic rustles, a dry, papery symphony that sounds like the wind moving through a field of wheat. The sound is familiar and grounding. The weaver feels the weight of the blankets, a heavy, reassuring pressure that marks the boundary between the sanctuary of the bed and the vast, freezing void of the cottage interior. The tip of the weaver's nose is cold, a sharp point of sensation that confirms the temperature of the air above the covers. The weaver decides to rise for a brief moment of maintenance, a nocturnal ritual of the hearth and the body. The process of leaving the warmth of the bed is executed with a slow, deliberate grace. The weaver pulls back the top layer of wool, and the sudden intrusion of the cold air against the skin is a bracing, electrical shock. It is a clean, honest cold that instantly sharpens the senses. Feet find the floorboards, which are now freezing to the touch. The wood is old and dense, its surface smoothed by decades of oil and use, and it feels like polished ice beneath the soles of the weaver's feet. Every step toward the main room is accompanied by a soft, rhythmic creak, a gentle, wooden protest from the house as it settles in the deep freeze. In the main room, the only light comes from the dying embers of the hearth. They glow with a dull, subterranean red, casting long, wavering shadows that reach across the stone floor like the fingers of a sleeping giant. The weaver approaches the fireplace. The smell here is richer, the deep, carbonized scent of the coal and the lingering, sweet musk of the apple wood. Using the iron shovel, the weaver gently stirs the bed of ash. A few bright orange sparks ascend into the chimney, dancing in a slow, chaotic spiral before vanishing into the darkness. The weaver takes a single, heavy log of seasoned birch, kept specifically for this hour, and places it atop the glowing core. The birch bark, white and papery, catches the heat almost immediately. It produces a soft, rhythmic hissing sound as the natural oils within the wood begin to vaporize. A tiny, blue-tinged flame licks at the edge of the log, followed by a steady, amber glow that begins to push back the shadows of the room. The weaver stands before the hearth for a minute, warming their hands. The heat is a localized, intense sensation, a sharp contrast to the cold air pressing against the weaver's back. The skin of the hands, still smooth from the beeswax, reflects the flickering light. This brief moment of stillness is a meditation on the nature of fire, its slow, consuming rhythm, its ability to transform solid matter into light and warmth. Turning away from the fire, the weaver moves toward the small kitchen table. The stone floor is even colder here, furthest from the hearth. The weaver reaches for a heavy ceramic pitcher. It is made of salt-glazed stoneware, its surface textured with a fine orange peel pitting. The weaver pours a small amount of water into a pewter cup. The sound of the water is a bright, rhythmic splashing, a liquid melody that seems startlingly loud in the profound silence of the night. The water is ice cold, and as the weaver drinks, the sensation is one of absolute purity. It is a cooling thread that travels down the throat, a liquid reflection of the winter world outside. The weaver's eyes drift toward the loom, standing in the corner like a silent wooden sentinel. Under the linen shroud, the silk is a hidden treasure, a secret being kept by the night. In the faint, flickering light of the new birch flame, the loom casts a massive, skeletal shadow against the far wall. It looks less like a machine and more like an ancient, geometric forest. The weaver feels a deep, quiet connection to the wood and the thread. Even in its stillness, the loom possesses a rhythmic potential, a promise of the work that will resume when the light returns. The weaver reaches out and touches one of the upright posts. The mahogany is cold and solid, a reassuring anchor in the dark. Before returning to the sleeping alcove, the weaver pauses at the window. The frost has continued its slow, inexorable growth. The patterns on the glass are now so thick they are opaque, a forest of crystalline silver that has completely obscured the world outside. The weaver imagines the snow falling beyond the glass, the silent, vertical descent of millions of flakes, piling higher and higher against the stone walls. There is a sense of being inside a great, white cocoon. The cottage is a hollowed-out space in the heart of a frozen universe, a small pocket of warmth and life protected by the rhythm of the stone and the thatch. The walk back to the bed is quicker, the cold now beginning to bite at the ankles. The weaver slides back beneath the indigo blankets, and the return of the warmth is a slow, luxurious sensation. It starts at the core and spreads outward to the extremities, a rhythmic pulsing of heat as the body recalibrates to the insulation of the wool. The weaver tucks the blankets tightly around the shoulders, creating a perfect seal. The pillow, still holding the faint scent of lavender, is a soft, yielding cloud. As the weaver settles, the rhythm of the house takes over once more. The grandfather clock in the hall marks the passage of the minutes, tick-tock, tick-tock. It is a sound that has no beginning and no end, a steady mechanical pulse that governs the life of the cottage. The weaver's breathing slows, becoming deep and regular. Each exhale is a soft, rhythmic sigh that merges with the whisper of the wind in the chimney and the occasional musical pop of the birch log on the fire. The weaver enters a state of deep, rhythmic contemplation. The mind begins to construct an abstract dream of the weaving process. In this internal landscape, the weaver is no longer a person, but a part of the loom itself. The thoughts are organized like the warp threads, long, parallel, and perfectly tensioned. The memories of the day are the weft, sliding through the thoughts with the smooth, rhythmic motion of the shuttle. Clack, shhhht, thump. The internal rhythm is a lullaby, a repetitive sequence of sounds and sensations that pulls the weaver deeper into the heart of the night. The dream shifts to the silk itself. The weaver imagines being a single strand of ivory thread moving through the silver eye of a hield. The sensation is one of incredible smoothness and precision. The world is a series of geometric intersections, a vast, shimmering web of potential. There is no conflict in this dream, no urgency. There is only the slow, inevitable growth of the fabric, row by row, inch by inch. The silk is a river of light, flowing through the darkness of the winter, a continuous line of beauty that connects the past to the future. Outside, the wind makes a low, mournful sound as it passes over the eaves of the cottage. It is a sound that emphasizes the solitude of the moor, the vast distances between this hearth and the next. But for the weaver, the solitude is not loneliness. It is a profound, rhythmic peace. It is the freedom of the winter, the season where the world stops its frantic movement and allows itself to rest. The weaver is a part of this rest, a part of the slow, unfolding history of the landscape. The clock strikes the half-hour, a single resonant ding that lingers in the air for a long time. The sound is a gentle reminder of the passage of time, a soft punctuation in the narrative of the night. The weaver's body is now completely relaxed, the muscles heavy and still. The heart rate is a slow, steady drumbeat, a rhythmic counterpoint to the ticking of the clock. The warmth of the bed is total, a solid wall of comfort that the cold cannot penetrate. The weaver watches the faint light from the main room as it dances on the ceiling of the alcove. The birch log is burning steadily now, its light a warm, flickering amber. The shadows move in a slow, hypnotic rhythm, mimicking the swaying of branches in a gentle breeze. The light is a visual lullaby, a soft, golden pulse that encourages the eyes to close and the mind to surrender to the deep, velvet darkness of sleep. In the year 1850, the night is a vast and sacred space. It is a time for the body to heal and the mind to weave its own internal fabrics. The weaver, drifting now into the deepest stages of slumber, is a master of this quietude. The rhythm of the weaver's life, the movement of the hands, the beat of the loom, the cycle of the seasons, is all contained within this moment of stillness. The silk is waiting, the fire is burning, and the world is asleep. The weaver's last conscious thought is of the morning, the first pale silver light on the frost, the smell of the new fire, and the rhythmic clack-shhhht thump of the loom resuming its work. But that is a world away. For now there is only the weight of the indigo wool, the scent of the dried straw, and the deep, rhythmic embrace of the winter night. The clock ticks on, a tireless guardian of the silence, as the silk weaver sinks finally into the profound, unmoving depths of the year's longest rest. The silence of the cottage is absolute. The stone walls hold the cold at bay. The thatch roof keeps the snow at a distance. Inside, the rhythm of life continues in its most basic, beautiful form, the steady, quiet breathing of a person at peace. The winter of 1850 is a season of patience, and the weaver is its most dedicated practitioner. The grandfather clock in the hallway, that tireless sentinel of the weaver's domestic life, strikes 4 times. The notes are heavy, bronze, and slightly muffled by the dense, cold air that has settled into the house during the deepest hours of the winter night. Each chime is a slow, rhythmic pulse that vibrates through the floorboards and into the frame of the bed, a gentle summons to the threshold of a new day. In the year 1850, 4 o'clock in the morning is not an hour of darkness to be feared, but a time of quiet preparation, a sanctuary of stillness before the mechanical and biological rhythms of the day resume their course. The weaver lies still for a long moment, listening to the echoes of the clock fade into the absolute silence of the cottage. The air in the sleeping alcove is now at its most crystalline. Every breath drawn is a sharp, refreshing draft that carries the scent of the deep freeze, a smell that is curiously reminiscent of iron and dried stone. The weaver's breath forms a thick, rhythmic plume of white mist that hangs in the air for a second before dissipating into the shadows. Beneath the heavy indigo blankets, the body is a reservoir of warmth, a small, pulsing heat source in a world of ice. The transition from this warmth to the environment of the room is a ritual of endurance and grace, one that the weaver has performed every winter morning for decades. Slowly, the weaver reaches out an arm to find the candle on the bedside table. The movement is deliberate, a slow-motion arc through the freezing air. The skin immediately prickles as the heat of the bed is replaced by the bite of the room. The fingers find the cold, smooth brass of the candlestick and the rough, dry texture of the tinderbox. There is a series of rhythmic, metallic scrapes, shrr clink, shrr clink, as the flint is struck against the steel. A shower of tiny, brilliant sparks illuminates the weaver's hands for a fraction of a second, reflecting off the polished fingernails and the fine lines of the skin. A spark catches the charred linen. A faint, orange glow appears, and with a focused, rhythmic breath, the weaver coaxes it into a small, flickering flame. The candle is lit. It is a tallow candle, hand-dipped and slightly irregular in shape. The light it casts is a warm, buttery yellow that struggles against the vast, oppressive darkness of the room. The flame is a tiny, dancing teardrop, its movement mirrored by the shadows that leap and sway on the stone walls. The weaver watches the flame for a minute, allowing the eyes to adjust to the light. The frost on the window panes, seen now in the glow of the candle, is a masterpiece of nocturnal artistry. The crystalline structures have grown even thicker since midnight, forming deep, opaque forests of ice that sparkle with 1,000 hidden fires. Rising from the bed is a process of systematic layering. The weaver sits up, the oat straw mattress giving its familiar rhythmic crunch. Feet are quickly inserted into thick, hand-knitted wool socks that have been warming beneath the blankets. The wool is coarse and substantial, providing an immediate barrier against the freezing floorboards. Next comes the heavy wool trousers and a thick linen shirt that has a slightly stiff, starchy texture. Finally, the weaver dons a waistcoat of dense, felted wool, buttoning it from bottom to top in a slow, rhythmic sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The buttons are made of polished horn, cool and smooth to the touch. Each button sliding into its hole is a small, tactile victory over the cold. The weaver carries the candle into the main room. The floorboards creak with a deep, resonant tone, a rhythmic greeting from the wood. The room is a cavern of shadows, the only light being the faint, dying glow of the birch log added hours ago. The weaver moves to the hearth. The first task of the morning is the resurrection of the fire. Using the iron poker, the weaver gently breaks the crust of gray ash that has formed over the coals. Beneath the ash, the embers are a vibrant, translucent red, like the heart of a dying star. The weaver adds a handful of dried pine shavings, thin, curled ribbons of wood that smell of resin and summer forests. As the weaver blows gently on the embers, the rhythm of the breath is reflected in the pulsing light of the fire. The shavings catch with a soft, melodic crackle, a sound like the breaking of thin glass. A bright, energetic flame begins to climb through the wood, casting long, rhythmic shadows across the loom. The weaver adds several smaller pieces of oak kindling, followed by a substantial log of seasoned ash. The ash wood is dense and heavy, promising a steady, reliable heat that will last until the sun rises. The smell of the new fire, sharp, woody, and sweet, fills the room, a sensory signal that the house is waking up. The weaver turns to the water pitcher. The surface of the water has frozen over during the night, a thin, transparent pane of ice that has captured a few stray dust motes in its grip. The weaver uses a heavy pewter spoon to break the ice. The sound is a sharp, rhythmic clink-crack, the shards of ice bobbing in the water like tiny, translucent boats. The weaver pours the water into a cast-iron kettle, the sound a deep, hollow gurgle that echoes in the quiet kitchen. The kettle is placed on the iron hook over the fire. Soon, the rhythmic humming of the heating water begins, a low, vibrational sound that increases in pitch as the temperature rises. While the water heats, the weaver performs a pre-dawn inspection of the silk supplies. In the year 1850, the management of inventory is a task of extreme precision. The weaver opens a small wooden cabinet where the filled bobbins are kept. There are 12 bobbins in total, each wound with the ivory silk that was prepared the previous afternoon. The weaver picks up each bobbin, feeling its weight and checking the tension of the silk. The bobbins are smooth and cool, the silk feeling like a layer of solid cream. The weaver counts them. 1, 2, 3. A rhythmic, numerical meditation that ensures everything is in order for the day's labor. The weaver then moves to the loom. It is a massive, silent presence in the candlelight. The weaver reaches out and gently lifts the linen shroud. The silk warp beneath is a shimmering, ghostly river, the threads catching the yellow light of the candle and turning it into a pale, iridescent silver. The weaver runs a finger along the reed, the metal strips making a soft, rhythmic ping-ping-ping as the finger passes. This is a moment of communion between the weaver and the machine. There is no rush, no pressure. The loom is a partner, a mechanical extension of the weaver's own intent. The kettle begins to whistle, a soft, melodic note that signals the water is ready. The weaver prepares a pot of tea, the dark leaves unfurling in the boiling water and releasing an earthy, grounding fragrance. The tea is poured into a heavy ceramic mug, the heat radiating through the clay and into the weaver's palms. The weaver sits in the high-backed chair by the fire, sipping the tea slowly. Each swallow is a rhythmic wave of warmth that travels through the body, loosening the stiffness of the night and clarifying the mind. Outside, the first, infinitesimal hint of light begins to appear in the eastern sky. It is not yet dawn, but the absolute blackness of the night is shifting into a deep, atmospheric charcoal. The snow has stopped falling, leaving a world that is perfectly white and perfectly still. The silence of the landscape is profound, a dense, heavy blanket that absorbs all sound. The weaver watches the window, waiting for the light to reach a level where the work can begin. The weaver returns to the loom and prepares the first shuttle of the day. The bobbin is inserted into the boxwood shuttle with a satisfying click. The end of the silk thread is pulled through the eye and tested for tension. The weaver takes their seat on the bench, the wood still holding a faint, residual warmth from the previous evening. The feet find the treadles, the hands grasp the beater. As the first, pale silver light of the morning begins to filter through the frost-rimmed windows, the weaver makes the first throw of the shuttle. Clack, the left treadle goes down, shhhht. The shuttle flies through the shed, thump. The beater seats the thread. The rhythm of the day has begun. It is a slow, hypnotic sequence of movements that will continue for hours. The weaver is no longer a person in a cottage. They are a part of the grand, rhythmic cycle of the winter of 1850. The ivory silk grows by a fraction of a millimeter with every throw, a physical record of the weaver's patience and the morning's silence. The fire burns steadily in the hearth, the clock ticks in the hall, and the loom sings its wooden song. Clack, shhhht, thump. The light in the room gradually increases, turning the shadows from black to gray to a soft, translucent blue. The frost on the windows begins to glow with an internal light, the crystalline patterns becoming more defined and brilliant. The weaver does not look up from the work. The focus is entirely on the thread, the tension, and the sound. There is a profound sense of security in this monotony. The world outside may be frozen and harsh, but here, Within the circle of the loom's rhythm, there is only order, beauty, and peace. The weaver pauses to adjust the temples. The wooden bars are moved forward with a rhythmic click-click, the metal teeth gripping the edges of the silk. The fabric is now a foot long, a dense, shimmering plane of perfection. The weaver runs a hand over the surface. It is cool, smooth, and incredibly solid. This is the fruit of the morning's first hour, a testament to the power of the slow, the steady, and the rhythmic. The weaver continues. Clack shhhd, thump. The shuttle moves back and forth like a silver bird. The beater strikes with the regularity of a heartbeat. The weaver's breathing is synchronized with the movement of the loom, a slow, deep inhalation as the shuttle flies, and a rhythmic exhalation as the thread is seated. The world is reduced to this sequence of three sounds, this one movement, this one goal. In the year 1850, in the heart of the winter, the life of the silk weaver is a study in the beauty of the boring, the majesty of the monotonous, and the profound, hypnotic power of the rhythm. The sun, still hidden behind the horizon, begins to cast a soft, pinkish glow onto the clouds. The light reaches the cottage, turning the snow outside into a field of pale roses. Inside, the ivory silk catches this new light, turning from silver to a warm, glowing cream. The weaver acknowledges the beauty of the moment with a brief, internal smile, but the rhythm of the loom does not falter. The work is the constant. The work is the anchor. Clack shhhd, thump. The weaver is at peace. The day has begun, and it is a day of silk, of fire, and of the slow, rhythmic passage of time in the winter of 1850. The sun has finally crested the horizon, though in the deep winter of 1850, its presence is more of a suggestion than a statement. It is a pale, ethereal orb, stripped of its golden heat, appearing as a disk of polished pewter hanging behind a thick, stationary veil of silver-gray clouds. The light it provides is flat and shadowless, pouring through the frost-trimmed windows of the cottage with a quiet, persistent clarity that reveals every microscopic detail of the weaver's environment. This is the hour of the full day, a time when the early morning's intimate shadows are replaced by a broad, administrative light that highlights the structural integrity of the loom and the pristine, clinical beauty of the ivory silk. The weaver remains at the bench, their body a study in rhythmic economy. The initial stiffness of the pre-dawn hour has long since evaporated, replaced by a fluid, mechanical ease. Each movement is a testament to decades of repetition, a physical manifestation of the concept of flow. The left foot depresses the treadle with a steady, calculated pressure. The right hand sends the shuttle gliding across the raceboard. The left hand pulls the beater forward with a solid, resonant strike. Clack shhhd, thump. The sound of the loom has changed slightly as the wood has warmed. The mahogany frame, having absorbed the heat from the hearth and the friction of the moving parts, now emits a deeper, more satisfied tone. There is a faint, rhythmic squeak from one of the leather straps that connects the treadles to the lambs, a tiny, melodic chirp that occurs every fourth beat. To a stranger, it might be an annoyance. To the weaver, it is a familiar voice, a sign that the machine is operating within its optimal parameters. It is a rhythmic punctuation that marks the passage of the inches. The weaver decides to pause for a mid-morning inspection of the warp beam at the rear of the loom. This is a task of extreme logistical importance. The warp beam holds the remaining length of the thousands of individual silk threads that have not yet been woven. If the tension on this beam is uneven, even by a fraction of a millimeter, the entire fabric could be compromised. The weaver stands and walks around to the back of the loom. The air here is cooler, away from the direct radiation of the fire, and it carries the dry, slightly dusty scent of the raw silk. The weaver's fingers move across the threads as they come off the beam. It is a tactile scan, a rhythmic stroking of the silver-ivory strands. The silk feels cool and incredibly fine, like the hair of a ghost. The weaver checks the lease sticks, two thin strips of wood that keep the threads in their proper order and prevent tangling. The sticks are polished to a high sheen and they rattle softly, a rhythmic wooden chatter as the weaver adjusts them. This adjustment is a slow and meditative process. Each thread must be perfectly parallel, a miniature highway of silk leading toward the heels. As the weaver works at the back of the loom, their attention is drawn to the heddles once more. These are the thousands of thin wires with eyes in the center through which the silk passes. In the flat mid-morning light, the heddles look like a silver forest. The weaver takes a small, soft-bristled brush and begins to dust them. The sound is a rhythmic shush-shush-shush, a gentle, sweeping noise that accompanies the visual inspection. It is a task that requires a steady hand and a quiet mind. A single snag could be disastrous, so the weaver moves with the patience of a diamond cutter. The floorboards at the back of the cottage are particularly old, and they possess a unique acoustic quality. As the weaver moves, the wood gives off a series of low-frequency thuds and high-pitched creaks, a rhythmic, percussive map of the room's history. The weaver knows exactly where to step to produce a specific sound, and this knowledge adds another layer of familiarity to the day's monotony. It is a world where every sound has a meaning, every texture a story. Returning to the front of the loom, the weaver notices a microscopic flaw in the woven fabric, a slub, or a tiny thickening of the silk thread that has made its way into the weft. This is a moment of extreme precision. The weaver reaches for a small, silver-plated needle kept in a velvet-lined box on the side table. The needle is incredibly thin, its point honed to a surgical sharpness. The weaver leans in close to the cloth, their breath hitting the ivory surface in a rhythmic, warm pulse. With the needle, the weaver gently teases the offending fiber, smoothing it out and realigning it with the surrounding threads. The movements are so small they are almost invisible to the naked eye. It is a battle of millimeters, a quiet, focused conflict against the inherent irregularities of natural fiber. The weaver's eyes are locked on the point of the needle, the rest of the world falling away. There is a profound sense of satisfaction when the slub is finally neutralized, and the fabric returns to its state of unblemished perfection. This tiny act of restoration is a fundamental part of the weaver's craft, a commitment to excellence that transcends the passage of time. The fire in the hearth has settled into a state of steady, reliable production. The ash log has burned down to a white, powdery exterior, but beneath that layer, it is a core of solid, glowing energy. The weaver adds a few more pieces of oak, the sound of the wood hitting the embers a series of muffled, rhythmic thuds. The warmth in the room is now absolute, a dry, encompassing heat that makes the freezing world outside feel like a distant memory. The weaver takes a moment to stand by the hearth, the heat radiating through the heavy wool of their trousers and warming the legs. The tea in the pot has grown cold, but the weaver does not mind. Cold tea has a different character, sharper, more astringent, a clean taste that clears the palate. The weaver drinks a few mouthfuls, the liquid a cool contrast to the warmth of the room. The rhythm of the day is now fully established, a steady, unwavering pulse that carries the weaver through the hours. There is no sense of boredom, for in the world of the weaver, there is no such thing as nothing happening. Every second is filled with the management of tension, the movement of the shuttle, and the observation of the light. The weaver decides to replenish the shuttle with a fresh bobbin. This requires another trip to the winding wheel. The process of winding is a rhythmic interlude, a circular movement that breaks up the linear progress of the weaving. The weaver takes a new skein of ivory silk and sets it on the swift. The swift, made of light, unfinished birch, spins with a soft, rhythmic whirring, whir-click, as the silk is transferred to the bobbin. The weaver watches the thread as it travels. It is a silver blur, a continuous line of light that seems to defy the laws of solid matter. The hand that guides the thread back and forth across the bobbin moves with a rhythmic, side-to-side motion, a steady, pendulum-like swing that ensures an even wind. The sound of the winding wheel is a low, hypnotic hum, a mechanical drone that provides a background for the weaver's thoughts. The mind wanders to the source of the silk, the mulberry trees in far-off lands, the careful tending of the silkworms, the rhythmic reeling of the cocoons. The weaver is the final stage in a global, ancient process, a link in a chain of human and natural industry. Once the bobbin is full, the weaver returns to the loom. The seat of the bench is now perfectly molded to the weaver's form, a comfortable wooden embrace. The shuttle is reloaded, the thread pulled through the eye with a rhythmic zip. The weaver's feet find the treadles, their weight shifting in a familiar, balanced dance. Clack shhhd, thump. The weaving resumes. The ivory cloth has now reached a length of 18 inches. It is a substantial weight of fabric, a shimmering cylinder of potential. The weaver observes the way the light from the window catches the twill of the weave. Though it is a plain weave, the natural variations in the silk create a subtle, diagonal movement across the surface, a ghostly, rhythmic pattern that appears and disappears as the weaver moves. It is like watching the surface of a still pond as a light breeze passes over it. Outside, the snow drifts have reached the midpoint of the window panes. The world is a study in vertical and horizontal lines. The vertical fall of the snow, now ceased, and the horizontal expanse of the white landscape. A single crow lands on a distant, skeletal branch of an oak tree. Its black silhouette is a sharp, rhythmic punctuation against the gray sky. The bird remains for a long time, its head tilting in a series of slow, calculated movements, before it takes flight, its wings beating the air with a heavy, rhythmic flap, flap, flap. The sound does not reach the cottage, but the weaver sees the rhythm and incorporates it into the pulse of the loom. The grandfather clock in the hall prepares to strike the hour of 11. The internal mechanisms of the clock engage with a series of rhythmic metallic clicks, clack, whir, snick. It is a sound of anticipation, a mechanical warning that another hour of the winter has passed. The 11 strikes are slow and resonant, each note hanging in the air like a drop of heavy liquid. The weaver counts them: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. The sound marks the progress of the morning, a rhythmic reminder of the day's slow, inevitable journey toward the afternoon. The weaver's hands are now perfectly attuned to the silk. The sensation of the fibers against the skin is no longer a separate stimulus. It is a part of the weaver's own sensory map. They can feel the tension of the warp through the shuttle, the density of the weft through the beater. It is a state of total rhythmic integration. The weaver is not just operating the loom, they are a component of the loom's logic. There is a profound, quiet beauty in this level of mastery. It is a beauty that is not found in grand gestures or sudden changes, but in the absolute consistency of the monotonous. In 1850, the quality of a man's work was measured by his ability to remain the same, to produce a fabric that was as perfect in its 1,000th inch as it was in its first. The weaver embraces this challenge, finding a hypnotic peace in the pursuit of the identical. The light in the room begins to shift again. The pale sun has moved slightly in the sky, and the angle of the light through the frost patterns has changed. The silver forests on the glass now cast long, crystalline shadows across the stone floor, creating a rhythmic, geometric carpet of light and dark. The weaver watches these shadows move, a slow-motion dance that measures the rotation of the earth. The world is moving, the time is passing, but here, within the cottage, the rhythm remains the same. Clack, shhhd, thump. The weaver prepares for the final hour before the midday meal. There is a sense of quiet accomplishment. The ivory silk is growing, the fire is burning, and the rhythm of the winter of 1850 continues its slow, hypnotic march. The weaver's world is small, contained, and perfectly ordered. There are no conflicts to resolve, no dramas to navigate. There is only the thread, the wood, the light, and the sound. The weaver's breathing is a soft, rhythmic counterpoint to the loom. Inhale, exhale. The air is warm and smells of silk and ash. The mind is clear and still, like the surface of a frozen lake. Every throw of the shuttle is a prayer to the god of the mundane. Every strike of the beater an affirmation of the beauty of the boring. As the weaver continues the work, the room seems to grow even quieter, the sound of the loom becoming the only sound in the universe. It is a rhythmic sanctuary, a place where time has no power, and the only thing that matters is the perfection of the next pick. The ivory silk shimmers in the pale light, a physical manifestation of the weaver's soul, growing row by row in the heart of the English countryside. Clack, shhhd, thump. The rhythm goes on. The silk weaver is at peace. The winter is long, the work is slow, and the world is perfectly, beautifully, boringly in balance. The clock in the hallway strikes the hour of 6, its deep, bronze voice resonating through the cooling air of the cottage with a measured, rhythmic finality. In the winter of 1850, 6 o'clock in the evening marks the true conclusion of the weaver's professional day. The sun has long since vanished, leaving the world outside the stone walls in a state of absolute velvet obsidian. The wind, which had been a low sigh earlier in the afternoon, has settled into a profound and heavy silence, as if the entire landscape has been pressed flat by the weight of the encroaching frost. Inside, the light from the oil lamp has begun to dim, the flame flickering slightly as the oil level reaches its lower limit, casting long, swaying shadows that stretch across the ceiling like the limbs of ancient trees. The weaver prepares for the final movement of the day's symphony. There is only 1 inch of silk left to weave to reach the day's goal, a modest but significant achievement that represents thousands of precise, rhythmic actions. This final inch is approached with the same reverence as the first. The weaver does not rush. To rush would be to betray the integrity of the cloth and the spirit of the craft. Every movement remains slow, deliberate, and entirely focused on the immediate present. The left treadle is depressed. Clack. The harness rises and the shed opens, a triangular tunnel of silver ivory threads that catch the dying lamplight. The shuttle is sent through. Shhhht. It moves with a slightly heavier sound now, the wood having absorbed the humidity of the evening. The weaver catches it in the left hand, feeling the familiar weight and the glass-like smoothness of the boxwood. The beater is pulled forward. Thump. The thread is seated, a tiny, microscopic addition to the growing masterpiece. Clack shhhht. Thump. The weaver begins the final count. 1, 2, 3. The internal pulse is steady, a rhythmic accompaniment to the mechanical heartbeat of the loom. Each pick of the weft is a moment of total immersion. The weaver watches the fell of the cloth, observing how the ivory threads interlace with a mathematical precision. The texture of the silk is now so dense and rich that it seems to possess its own internal gravity. It is a solid, shimmering object, a piece of time that has been frozen into a physical form. As the final rows are completed, the weaver experiences a sense of profound, quiet closure. The rhythm of the day is winding down, the energy of the morning having been transformed into the tangible reality of the silk. The weaver's body feels heavy and satisfied, a comfortable fatigue that settles into the joints and muscles like a warm blanket. The shoulders are relaxed, the hands are steady, and the mind is as clear as the ice on the pond. Clack shhhht. Thump. The last throw of the shuttle is made. The weaver catches the wooden tool and holds it for a moment, feeling its warmth. The thread is cut with a pair of small, sharp shears, a clean, metallic snip that signals the end of the labor. The weaver lets the beater rest against the cloth for the final time today. The loom is now silent, but the silence is different from the silence of the morning. It is a productive silence, a silence filled with the presence of the finished work. Standing up from the bench, the weaver performs the ritual of the final maintenance. The temples, the wooden rods that have held the fabric taut all day, are released. The sound is a sharp, rhythmic click-snap as the tension is removed. The weaver then turns the heavy wooden handle of the cloth beam, winding the day's progress onto the roll. The ratchets on the beam make a series of slow, rhythmic clicks, clack, 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 as the silk is tucked away. The weaver runs a hand over the surface of the roll. It is a thick, solid cylinder of luxury, cool and smooth to the touch, a physical record of 12 hours of patience and rhythm. The weaver carries the oil lamp to the hearth. The fire has burned down to a deep, cavernous glow, the logs having been reduced to a landscape of shifting orange and translucent red. Using the iron tongs, the weaver places a final, heavy log of seasoned oak onto the embers. This log is the night watchman, a piece of wood so dense and well seasoned that it will burn slowly and steadily until the first light of dawn. The oak catches with a low, guttural hiss, a thin line of blue smoke curling up into the chimney. The heat it radiates is steady and solid, a wall of protection against the sub-zero temperatures outside. The weaver prepares a final cup of herbal tea, made from dried chamomile and mint harvested in the late summer. The scent is calming and nostalgic, a reminder of the sun-drenched gardens that now lie buried beneath 3 feet of snow. The weaver sits in the wing-backed chair, the heavy wool upholstery giving a soft, rhythmic creak as it accepts the body's weight. The tea is hot and sweet, a liquid warmth that travels through the chest and belly, signaling to the nervous system that the day is truly done. Outside, the frost continues its slow, geometric expansion. The windows are now completely opaque, covered in a thick, crystalline tapestry of silver and white. The patterns are so intricate that they look like the work of a master weaver, thousands of tiny, frozen threads crossing and recrossing in a complex, rhythmic dance. The weaver watches the frost for a time, mesmerized by its silent, unhurried growth. It is a reminder that even in the stillness of the night, there is a rhythm and a process to the world. The weaver reflects on the life of the silk weaver in 1850. It is a life of extreme focus and total monotony, yet it is a life of profound meaning. In the creation of the silk, the weaver finds a connection to the natural world, to the mechanical world, and to the deep, rhythmic currents of time. Every day is the same, yet every day is unique. Every inch of silk is identical, yet every inch is a new creation. It is a paradox of peace, a sanctuary of the mundane. The clock in the hall prepares to strike the hour of 7. The internal mechanisms engage with a familiar, rhythmic whirring. The 7 strikes are slow and heavy, a bronze punctuation in the narrative of the evening. The weaver listens to each note, letting the sound vibrate through their bones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The final note lingers in the air for a long time, a humming resonance that slowly fades into the velvety quiet of the cottage. The weaver stands and extinguishes the lamp. The process is slow and rhythmic. The brass knob is turned, the wick is lowered, and the flame shrinks until it is a tiny blue point. With a gentle breath, the weaver blows it out, poof, and the room is plunged into a soft, ambient darkness. The only light now comes from the glowing oak log in the hearth, a deep, subterranean red that casts long, wavering shadows across the stone floor. The room feels larger and more ancient in this light, a space out of time. The weaver moves toward the sleeping alcove by touch and memory. The floorboards give their final, rhythmic creaks, a soft, wooden good night. The weaver slides beneath the heavy indigo wool blankets, the dried oat straw of the mattress giving its familiar, crisp rustle. The transition from the air of the room to the warmth of the bed is a slow, luxurious sensation. The weaver pulls the blankets up to the chin, creating a perfect, insulated cocoon. As the weaver lies in the darkness, the rhythm of the house continues its tireless vigil. The grandfather clock marks the seconds, tick-tock, tick-tock, a steady mechanical pulse that ensures the world remains in balance. The wind in the chimney makes a low, musical sound, a rhythmic humming that acts as a lullaby. The weaver's breathing slows, becoming deep and regular. Each exhale is a soft, rhythmic sigh that merges with the silence of the night. The weaver's mind enters the final, rhythmic state of the day. The images of the loom, the silk, the fire, and the snow all begin to dissolve into a single, unified pulse of existence. There is no more thought of the labor, no more concern for the tomorrow. There is only the weight of the blankets, the scent of the lavender, and the deep, heavy silence of the winter night. The weaver has become a part of the rhythm of 1850, a part of the stone, the wood, and the slow, unfolding history of the seasons. The ivory silk rests on the beam, a shimmering record of a day well spent. The fire burns steadily in the hearth, a silent sentinel of warmth. The snow falls silently outside, a white curtain over the world. The weaver is asleep, their heart beating in perfect synchronization with the ticking of the clock. The day is finished, the work is done, and the world is perfectly, beautifully, and boringly at peace. The end.